This is an idea straight out of a children's movie, but a Florida lawmaker is looking to make this a reality. Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier pitching a new facility to hold migrants in the Everglades called Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, he says the location presents a low-cost opportunity to build a temporary detention facility because you don't need to invest that much in the perimeter if people get out. Not a lot waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. The Attorney General estimated that the facility could be up and running within 30 to 60 days of construction and house up to 1,000 undocumented migrants.
So we want to bring in Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes here. Now, Khalif, there's several legal questions associated with this. First of all, what kind of processes do you have to typically go through to get a federal holding facility other than I have an idea and a location?
I think that's where it starts in this administration. You have an idea, you have a location. I mean, I always start with this. The federal government is solely responsible for dealing with immigration. So this is a state attorney general that has been extremely supportive of immigration efforts. He ran on that. He's continued to make those type of statements since he's been in office. So this is not something that I would put past him in terms of the idea. Now, in terms of the implication, that's a whole nother thing. I think you'd point to 287G. We've had familiarity here with that in North Carolina, with specifically with our sheriff, with that allows ICE agents to work with local and state officials in the attempt to try to allow them to, help with the immigration efforts. But that's in conjunction with ICE. And so I think that would be the first way you get them to be able to work in conjunction with ICE. Now, the funding portion is the other part of it. Like, what type of funds were used to build this facility? Because if it was a training facility, that would probably be the biggest pushback. But other than that, I don't think anything would stop that. But this is really changing the narrative on his head. I mean, if you're talking about a detention center, the way he talked about it seemed more like a jail. I mean, because if you're asking for folks that are some type of fear or deterrent, the comment of anything out there, the only thing out there would be the alligators. There's 200,000 alligators they're saying that live in those Everglades right now. And so I think his approach is more fear than trying to find a proper place to keep these people while they go through the process.
Khalif, I'm all for thinking outside the box, right? I mean, and they say that wildlife, this would be instead of walls, right? A natural perimeter out there. But when you're talking about alligators and pythons, at what point does basic human rights, cruel, unusual punishment, I mean, is it legal? Can you do really whatever you want?
I think that there's nothing that would be illegal about it. I don't think it's cruel and unusual punishment. It definitely just seems like something that would be inhumane. That's probably the level that these are folks that they haven't committed a crime. Regardless of how you feel about folks with the immigration process, it is not a crime. Now, the crime, they may have been folks that committed some other crime, but the detention process isn't criminal in nature. You are detaining them and attempting to remove them from the country, and that is the process that should be done in a humane manner. And so I say it again, if you're trying to create these mini prisons to keep people when they're supposed to have due process, have an opportunity to be heard, and be able to state that, hey, I'm running from some type of persecution in the country that I left from. All those things typically are in a courtroom, not in a prison or in some type of holding facility. But as I mentioned, the narrative has shifted where now the country is pushing towards this isolationism and that nationalism. And when you have those types of things, it's us versus them. When it's us versus them, you don't care in the manner of how you get rid of folks. And these are why you have comments like that.
Do you feel like this might be in response to sending migrants to prisons in El Salvador, sending people out of the country, saying, all right, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this now. What if we kept people on U.S. soil?
I think it's just efficiency. I mean, he talked about like this was a place where they were landing and planes could already come. So if you can have planes already come, when we already have the folks there, that's one less flight that I'd have to get them from Louisiana, where they currently are sending folks, or in other parts of Florida. And so I think it's more efficiency and not about a PR or saving, face. I think this individual is clearly supportive of removing individuals by any means necessary as quick as possible. And the way he talked about it was the landing strips there, they can get right on the plane and get right out.
All right, Khalif, we'll have to see if it's more than an actual idea. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.